Happy Monday night to everybody. Welcome in, Jason Priester of the Clemson Insider. Wish everybody out there a very Merry Christmas. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. It'll be here the very next day after that. Want to thank our sponsors, A-Glass, before we get started. For when you need a glass, A-Glass, all your auto glass needs. They do replacement, repair. 2 locations in the PD, one in Florence, one in Sumter. You can get yourself a free quote, myaglass.com. All the information will be scrolling at the bottom of the screen throughout the show. Locations, telephone numbers, even the website, as you can see right there. So I want to thank those guys for sponsoring the show. A-Glass, for when you need a glass. Again, they do all your auto glass needs, replacement and repair. Well, the season has come to an end, folks. And, probably not the way people would have wanted it to end. Obviously, you want to move on and be playing in the next round. There's got to be, I was one who thought that this was a playoff team coming into the season. I predicted them to go 10-2, make the playoff, and probably not compete for a national title. Ended up playing out kind of that way. There's a lot of things that you saw, Saturday that you got to be pleased with. A lot of things that you saw that you're probably not pleased with too. And before we dive into this thing too deep, a couple of things I'm not going to do tonight. I'm not going to be talking about coaches I think should get fired. So don't ask. I'm not going to answer. Not my job. And, I can't tell you who's entering the portal and who's not because I don't know. I'll be glad to give you an opinion on it, but that's about all I can do. Now, we can talk about how bad the defense was and those kind of things, but I am not going to get into start calling for coaches' jobs and things like that. And I'm not going to say, well, I think one coach needs to be fired or another one doesn't. Above my pay grade, that's why I'm not a football coach. So that's going to be off limits. Sorry, that's just the way it is. But we can dive into anything else you want to dive into. We'll start out with the good. You got to, love what you saw from the offense. Probably, if you had to do it over again, probably wish you might would have thrown it once down there on the goal line. But other than that, it's hard. It's hard to complain about what you saw, especially when you really didn't have a running back, man. They actually did run Adam Randall out there a little bit. And I know he had the big run, and yes, I was wrong. I didn't think they'd do it. But he was a liability, man, a big one. At least 2 of their sacks came when he was on the field. From my understanding, they taught him 4 run plays and nothing about pass protection. So every time he comes on the field, if you're the defensive coordinator, he's a liability back there. He's probably not going to even stay back to pass protect. And on the 2 sacks that he was on the field for, that's what happened. So you say you're down a guy. I mean, it leaves the quarterback vulnerable. Do like the idea of moving him there in the spring. We'll see if that's enough to keep him satisfied and in the fold because, I've said it before. I think he's probably a guy worth monitoring when it comes to the losing guys to the portal. I think there's probably a lot of names worth monitoring. There is a lot of money being thrown around here right now in this portal window. Some of these schools are offering insane deals to kind of get out in front of the rev share that's coming in the summer. So they're putting together these big fat deals now. And you can best bet there's some guys on Clemson's roster that are going to the teams are at least going to try and poach them. And Clemson's been really good about at retention. We're fixing to find out how good they really are at retention. because there's several guys on that roster that are going to be targets, and we'll see if they can keep them in the fold. But yeah, as good as the offense was, man, the defense was just it was bad. People got mad at me the other night because I made the headline of one of my stories. Clemson got spanked. If you don't think Clemson's defense got spanked, we're just gonna agree to disagree. When you give up that many rushing yards, that many yards per carry, and you can't stop it at all. You got spanked. Your defense got downright spanked. And that's the way I turned it. That's the way I saw it. That's the way I still see it. There was some people that got upset with me about that. I don't really care. But, it was it was bad. And, I get it. A lot of the criticism goes at the defensive coordinator. But, man, he's just the guy calling the plays and coaching the linebackers. He's not the one coaching the defensive tackles who are not very good fundamentally. He's not the one coaching the defensive ends who routinely can't get the edge set. He doesn't coach those DBs who were getting pass interference penalties and getting roasted. He doesn't coach the safeties who are out of position a lot of times and sometimes make the corners look bad because it's the safety that's out of position. He coaches the linebackers and calls the plays. I think Clemson's issues on defense go deeper than who calls the plays. If I'm Sark, I'm not even throwing the ball Saturday unless I absolutely have to. Man, they gave Clemson a mulligan when they tried to throw it on. I think it was fourth down there. There ain't no way I'm throwing the ball there. I'm going to turn around and hand it off every time. I'm getting 7 yards of carry. It's just disastrous. And I see somebody already saying it here. He didn't make any adjustments. I mean, what adjustments you wanting to make? They're already running a 4-3. I mean, you're running out of 4-3 base, man. You shouldn't have to make some big major adjustment to stop the run. Hold on, I'm reading this comment that says Aaron Nolan, the USC, heard Clemson said no to him. Yeah, Clemson wasn't in the market for a quarterback. I don't know that there was ever any contact there, so I don't know what you mean about Clemson saying no to him. But anyways, again, I think Clemson's issues are deeper than, one guy. So we'll see what Dabo Swinney does to, address those issues. But the defense it's fallen off a cliff this year. It was pretty good Wes's first year. It's actually, it was really good his first year. The pass defense needed to be shored up. They did that. It was top 10 in a lot of statistical categories last year. I don't have the explanation for what happened this year. It's hard to watch sometimes because guys can't tackle. They take bad angles. They're out of position. Seems like sometimes they're not lined up in the right spot. I mean, it's just a bunch of little things that add up to a lot of big problems. And those are coaching issues. And I think most of them are anyways. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think the players of the day are as dedicated as they were back, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But there's a lot of coaching issues, I think, on that side of the ball. And, if you're Dabo Swinney, you absolutely have to take a long, hard look at that thing and see what you can do to address it and get it shored up. Whether that means making a change here, making a change there, I don't know. I would just say this. I would think all options are on the table. Wouldn't expect it. Let's assume for a moment there's going to be a tweak to the staff. I wouldn't expect to hear anything about it this week. So, especially with it being Christmas in a couple of days, and the way Dabo likes to operate, he's going to have somebody. If he is going to make a move, he's already going to have the replacement locked in before he makes the move. So, we'll see how it plays out. We'll see if there is even any tweaks made. I'm not saying there will be. I'm just saying if there is. But you absolutely gotta, because this wasn't a one-off thing, man. This was the worst of the season, but it's kind of been rolling in that direction, for a while now. It kind of started in the garbage time of some of those early blowouts in the first half of the season, and then it really started to blow up against Louisville. Not so much against Virginia Tech. That was probably their best defensive showing of the year, but then against Pitt and South Carolina, even the Citadel. And I'm willing to give, all things equal, usually you give them a pass for that. They don't play against the option. They don't practice for it anymore. But you can't really give them a pass for it because it's the same result week after week after week after week. Citadel run for over 300 yards on them. And then you see what Lenore's did to them in the rivalry game, and then it just kind of culminated in what happened Saturday. I will be shocked if, let's just say, if everything remains status quo. I'll be shocked, and I'll leave it at that. But I do think there were a lot of good things, to take away from what happened on the offensive side of the ball. I thought Cade played his rear end off, man. I thought, TJ Moore finally had that breakout game we kind of all been waiting on. Wesco did have a couple more drops, but Brennan still had a couple of tough catches. I thought they actually, did a little bit. Was able to generate a little bit of a running game without really having a running back. So kudos to Garrett Riley for being able to do that. The fact that EZ was on the field so many times in that second half and never even got a carry kind of leads me to believe some of those things I've heard about him fumbling are true. But I think they had over 70 rushing yards, if I'm remembering right. And to do that without Moffa or Haynes against that defense, that's pretty impressive. What Clemson did to that defense Saturday, nobody had done it all season long. No, they had given up 4 touchdown passes all year. Cade threw 3 on them. So that's pretty impressive. Big game to build off from him for next season. And no, I've not heard anything about him heading off to the draft. I see somebody already asking me that. Is Klubnik leaving? I'm hearing Cade's a lock for the draft. I don't know where you're hearing that stuff at. I know he's been asked a couple of times in the past week about next year, and he won't comment on it. That's not unusual in today's game. You got to remember, with the season now ending, it's time to work on, the contract for next year. So he's got to have some leverage. So let's just put it that way. I 100% expect Cade back next year. Having said that, he's probably gonna have some offers from other schools that are probably double what Clemson can offer right now at this point. So, if he comes back, he's going to come back for less money than he could have got somewhere else. But I fully expect him to be back. I don't expect him to head off to the NFL, and I don't think he's going to transfer or none of those things. I just think they're working out the specifics of that deal, and that's why he's kind of been mum on it. Went in with no expectations, amazed they had a chance to win after giving up 292 yards. I think that, it kind of speaks to the grittiness. I know that's a word that's used a lot, man, but that's a game when it got 28-10. It could have gotten out of hand real quick right there. I mean, it was teetering. It was fixing to come off the rails, and they did not let that happen, and they didn't quit fighting, and they kept playing. And man, they had a chance to make that thing a game. The long touchdown run in the second half was backbreaking. That that right there is when you absolutely have to have a stop from your defense, and they go out there and give up almost an 80-yard run. I think it was on the second play of the series. I mean, you can't have that. And then not being able to punch it in from the one. And I've seen a bunch of people giving Garrett a bunch of crap for trying to run it twice there, but that's kind of one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if they threw it and it didn't get in, then he's going to be getting killed for not running it. I can't remember if it was the third down play or the fourth down play, but he said, there were multiple, options on that thing. And the third down play didn't look right to me. It looked like something was off. The one where Adams got all upset. I thought he was a little, to me, watching it live, and I've not gone back and watched the replay. Heck, I just got home a little while ago, but it looked like he was a little slow to react on snap. And the fourth down play just never really had a chance from the jump. But yeah, I mean, I think it speaks volumes about what that team's made of. The fact that they didn't let it, get out of hand when it got 28-10, because they easily could have went that route. And again, that's one of the best defenses in the country, and Cade kind of carved them up, particularly in the second half. Proud of Adam Randall. Hope he really picks up the position this spring. He and EZ could be a powerful duo. Yeah, I'd like to see it. Randall after a full off season of getting, after a full off season of transitioning. He's big. He can move. He's pretty good with the ball in his hands. It's intriguing for sure. Absolutely. Hopefully. I will say he's a name that I've heard that is definitely a candidate to transfer. Maybe this, they can keep him on board, and this is something that, plays a part in him staying. We'll see how it plays out, because they really, I know they brought in a wide receiver, but you don't really want to lose anymore. You don't want that room to take any more hits. Does the team have any more room for transfers, say a linebacker or a running back? They're full at running back right now. You're losing one, and you got one coming in who is Gideon Davidson. And I don't know why anybody – let me rephrase. If you knew how Gideon's recruitment played out, then you would understand part of the reason why they're not going to bring in a transfer on top of him. Not to mention the fact he might be a guy that can start day one. It's hard for a running back, but if it can be done, he's one of the guys. He's one of the guys absolutely capable of doing it. And then you got Haynes coming back. You'll have EZ. I don't know that you need a transfer there. Now, linebacker, I think Clemson could absolutely benefit from bringing in a linebacker. You're losing Barrett. You're bringing in Logan Anderson, who just tore his ACL there in the high school playoffs. So he's probably going to redshirt next year. You'll have Kobe McLeod coming off injury. Behind Sammy Brown and Wade Woodhouse, you don't really have a whole lot. You got McLeod, you got Wade Woodhouse's little brother who redshirted this year. CJ Cooper Taylor redshirted this year. I shouldn't say you don't have a whole lot. You don't, as fans or people in the media, you don't really know what they have behind Woodhouse and Brown, because we've just not really seen them. And you got Jamal Anderson, who probably needs to add some bulk if he wants to be a major contributor. But I think linebackers definitely, if it's me, I'm definitely looking to maybe make a move there. And I might would look at making a move at safety, even though I like a lot of the young safeties they got. A lot of that's going to depend on where they think those guys are. And maybe they wait to the spring window to do some of this stuff, because don't forget there's a spring window where you can add too. Maybe they go through the spring and see what some of those young guys do, and then decide whether they want to add or not. But safety could be a spot where you can benefit from bringing in a guy with, say, 1 year left, and kind of bridge the gap between R.J. Mickens and some of those young guys. But they're really high on Ricardo Jones. He ended up, he played, got his feet wet this season, and he really flashed. He made a play the other night on special teams. There's some other guys in that safety room that they're really high on. So it might just depend on what they think about those guys. They might wait after the spring and make that decision and see what they got from some of those younger guys. Jarvis Green looked thicker than I remembered. Kind of looked apart the other day, and I don't know if y'all remember, I sat here last week before last, somebody told me what fast enough to play at this level. So, I was just glad to see Clemson try a wheel route. It's not something we see very often from them anymore. He's a guy too that I would say is a candidate to maybe seek more playing time elsewhere. We'll see. Fix gaps on D with portal and find a number one running back. We're in the conversation for next year. See, I don't think you got a lot of gaps on defense, man. I think there's plenty of talent there. You look along that defensive line, man, it's loaded with blue chip guys. I think you had a gap there at defensive end, and they addressed that. Everywhere else, you're good with, as far as your starters, I think. I wouldn't mind seeing them add one more piece of linebacker, but I don't think it's like a do or die type of thing. I think they have just fundamental issues on defense, coaching issues. And again, I think they're deeper than who calls the plays, because Goodwin only coaches the linebackers. He doesn't coach the tackles. He doesn't coach the ends. Any of those guys on the back end, it's something that's got to get addressed. And I think if you get that addressed and get that shored up, I think you'll be okay. Hearing Cade is good as going to NFL draft. I would consider getting better sources. Air Nolan, South Carolina makes no sense. You saw they lost Lenorse for a couple of games this year already. You need an insurance policy. I can guarantee you they overspent. They paid over market for a backup quarterback. I guarantee it. Probably so much so that he's willing to sit another year. And Lenorse could easily head off to the draft after next year. If he does that, who knows? Maybe Nolan sticks around, job's his. If Lenore stays another year, I'd bet almost anything Nolan's right back into portal after next year. Who this is bad news for? If you're a fan of Cutter Woods, this is bad news for him, because they brought Nolan in right on top of Cutter. But this was Nolan going there was all about the Benjamins. I can tell you that. They paid over the market for it. Oh, here we go. You didn't say the defense got spanked. You said Clemson got spanked as a whole. And for that, yes, you were wrong. You can tell who doesn't read past the headline. And I'm going to leave it at that, because if you actually read the story, it specifically says Clemson's defense got spanked. I tell you, there were some people mad about the headline. But at least kudos to you, Ronnie. At least you weren't one of the ones giving me advice on how to do my job. I mean, I people are sometimes going to get upset about a headline. Fine, that's part of the gig. I understand that, and totally fine with it. Totally can't accept it. It ain't that big a deal to me. But man, there was some of those guys in that thing tagging me, and it got a little ridiculous. I quit reading them at one point. But sometimes you got to read the whole story, man. I mean, it's more about the headline, because if you read the whole story, yeah, that's exactly what it says. Is Clemson's defense got spanked. Does Clemson players have a 10-day window? No. I think the window's, I think it's 5 days now. Wait a minute. No. I can't remember. We counted it up yesterday. They don't get a window beyond the 28th. Whatever the day, I think it might be 10, but no, they have to be in by the 28th. I think there's disconnect between Wes. I don't know. I think everybody likes Wes just fine. I don't know that there's any disconnect or anything like that. I don't. I just. No, I think everybody likes Wes just fine. I'm just going to leave it there. How do you break a guy like Terrell from grabbing so much? That's a good question, because Clemson already has those guys. Somebody was posting in this Facebook group I got the other day talking about how they need to bring the boxing gloves back. With they already do that. They do that now, and that's something they do to kind of try to help them from not grabbing so much. But yeah, Terrell definitely had a bad night the other night, and I thought he got. This is just my opinion now. I can't say for sure. It just looked to me like he started getting a little frustrated. And, if you're a defensive back, man, you got to flush things quickly. And if you get frustrated, it can snowball on you in a hurry. And I kind of thought that's the way things kind of unfolded, man. I thought he got a bad break on one of the calls. Probably there was one that should have been offensive pass interference maybe. But if you're a corner, man, you got to have a very short memory. You got to be able to flush that thing as soon as it's over. And I'm not sure he was able to do that. And I thought it affected him as the game wore on. Defense had a standard whenever Brent was there. So the first year he's gone, yeah, they're going to look good, but they've gradually gone downhill since then. Yeah, they've gotten worse every year since then. But, I mean, let's not pretend like they were a disaster last year. They weren't. It's the offense that was a disaster last year. The offense was a disaster the year before that, and the defense actually won a lot of those games. It's this year where it's just falling off a cliff. Again, they were top 10 in a bunch of statistical categories last year. They're not sniffing top 10, I don't think, in anything this year. I think they're outside of the top 100 in yards per carry. I looked up some of the rushing statistics the other day, man. They're abysmal. They are abysmal. And this is a word I don't like to use very often, but they're unacceptable. At a school like Clemson, known for being tough on defense. And I'll say this, man. I think the defense is soft as Charmin. I think they are soft. I don't know why. Because, again, man, it's not like one guy coaches all of them. They're kind of broke down into positions. I think they're soft up front. I thought they looked soft against Texas. I thought there's been other games this year they looked soft. And you got too much talent up front to look soft that way, man. That's why I say that I think the issues lie deeper than who's calling the plays and coaching the linebackers. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying. I'm not. It's not a defense of anybody. I'm just saying I don't know that that's the only problem. It's got to be a big time assessment done there, and I think that was probably started before they even went to Austin, if you want to know the truth. The right tweaks, team could be lethal next year. I agree. I think they got the pieces again. I don't think there's this big talent issue on defense. It's just I think there's some coaching deficiencies on that side of the ball, and I don't think it's, in my opinion, I don't think it's just one guy. I think there's at least one person on that side of the ball that, as a coach, always seems to get a pass, and I don't know why, because his position group certainly hasn't played up to the standard, and I'm not naming the name. If you want to, try to read between the lines, so be it. But I just think there are some we used to always, kind of put a microscope on the coaches on the offensive side of the ball. Now it's time to do that on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that's something they got to do this offseason. Tennessee and SMU suck. I've seen so many people griping this weekend about the blowouts. It's like they've suddenly forgot. I want to say like 70% of all playoff games have been decided by double digits or something like that. Excuse me. I remember there was one point during the 14 playoff, I think like 12 of the first 16 quarterfinal games were blowouts. I can't remember specifically, so don't hold me to that. But, we see way more blowouts in the playoff than we do good games. And that was in the 14 playoff. I don't know why we thought we were going to see different in the 12-team playoff. Just SMU gets blown out. What's the other team that got blown out? I'm drawing a blank. Golly, who was it? The other non-SEC team. Anyways, you know what I'm talking about. They get blown out. All of a sudden, they don't belong. We should have took Ole Miss or Alabama or even South Carolina. Man, that's crap. This one game, SMU's up there playing in, what was it, 20-degree weather. But then when Tennessee gets their doors blown off, that narrative just suddenly stops. You don't hear it anymore. We're not talking about how these teams didn't belong, because all of a sudden it's an SEC team that got their doors blown off. It's just it's always been that way. And I'm kind of went off the rails here with this comment. I just not even directed at you, but I've kind of this last month, man, has really soured me on college football in general and as a whole. Because if you don't play in the SEC, you are second rate. That is as plainly obvious as it's ever been. And there is nothing you can do to change it. You can go 12-0 in the ACC or the Big 12, and guess what? It's not going to matter. You're going to be second rate to a 9-3 or 8-4 SEC team because the media said so. We're seeing that the SEC conference is actually putting out tweets trolling ACC programs, man. Hey, we have gone off the deep end here, man. This is no longer college athletics. It is a sport that is run by television executives. Just look what happened Saturday. Who was the genius that decided to put playoff games, college football playoff games, up against the NFL? That was the dumbest thing ever. Take a look at the Nielsen ratings on those bad boys. See how bad the college games got smoked. But yeah, we're headed down a bad path here, man, and it's totally taking the fandom out of it for me. I don't even care anymore who wins and who loses, because the media is going to decide who the best teams are anyways. That's where we're headed, and we're going to get there in very short order. $65 of 76 rushing yards for Clemson were in the first half. I mostly abandoned it in second. K lit them up for 260. Yeah, he torched them. That's for sure. You get down 28-10, you kind of got to abandon the run, but and it's not like they got a. You could kind of tell just the fact that they moved Adam Randall there and taught him a couple plays. That tells you exactly. Where Keith Adams is right now, where Easy is right now, where Jarvis Green is right now. There's not really a whole lot left to be said there. In case you missed it, I said at the time, I was told that they taught him 4 running plays and absolutely nothing about pass protection. So, but yeah, once you get down 28-10, you better start slinging it around. And man, TJ Moore had himself an afternoon. It was kind of his coming out party. They started giving him a little bit of cushion, and he started to make them pay. Not sure about the 2 calls at the goal line. Would like to see a pass. So that's what I mean. I think you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't there. If he throws it on 4th and 1, then you're going to have certain people saying they should have tried to run it. If you run it there, you're going to have certain people saying you should have tried to throw it. You run this running play, you're going to have these people saying it should have been that running play. If you run it to that side, you're going to have these people saying you should have run it to this side. So, I mean, you kind of danged if you do, danged if you don't. I mean, again, I wouldn't have mind seeing one attempt at the end zone there to maybe TJ or Brennan Stool, but, it kind of is what it is. If you can't, you ought to be able to line up and run it in from a yard out. That's kind of conventional wisdom, right? Especially if you got 2 tries at it. Mr. Negative. Does this mean reality is kicked in and the portal will be used? I don't think reality. I'm not sure what you're asking. Again, I know certain people don't like to believe this, but Clemson tried to use the portal last year. We've already seen them take 2 guys this year. I don't know what you mean by more often. I think if Dabo believes he's got a gap somewhere, he's going to go and try to fill it if he needs to fill it through the portal. We've seen him do it at wide receiver already and defensive end already. I don't expect that to change. They tried to do that last year. I wasn't a big fan with, I've said it many times, I wasn't a big fan with the way they tried to recruit the portal last year necessarily the guy, they tried to supplement what they missed on in offensive linemen in the 2024 class. They tried to supplement that by recruiting some through the portal. And when you got 4 or 5 starters coming back, you're probably not going to have much luck unless you write those guys a big fat check. And Clemson can't afford to be writing big fat checks to guys that aren't going to play. And Dabo's definitely not going to pay somebody, bring them in, and pay them more than his starters are making. It's not going to happen. But, I mean, I don't think Clemson going and grabbing a couple of guys out of the portal should have been earth-shattering news. I've been saying for weeks Clemson was going to use the portal. I knew it. It's not been some big secret. Now, the guys they've been targeting, the way, who they've been recruiting and those kind of things have been kept tightly under wraps. But the fact that they were going to make some moves in the portal, that's not been a secret, man. It's been talked about for weeks, so shouldn't have been that earth-shattering. I mean, I guess I can see the logic in saying I'll believe it when I see it because they really hadn't done it yet. But, if you go back to last year, they really did want to add an offensive lineman or 2. I just think they targeted the wrong type of guys. But, Dabo's been saying for 3 years, if he's got a gap, he's going to go fill it. And just because some fans' definition of gap doesn't align with Dabo's definition of gap, all of a sudden he's totally, he refuses to recruit the portal. So I mean, I don't know why anybody was surprised. If that's what you're asking me when you're saying will it be used more often. I think somebody's trying to hack my Microsoft account. Offense finally turned the corner. Should be a top 5 offense in 2025. Yeah, the offense finally gets going and the defense falls off the cliff. Who would have? I don't think anybody had that on their bingo card this year, man. I don't think anybody could have foreseen just how bad Clemson's run defense was going to be. I don't remember any single person, having a whole lot of questions about what Clemson was bringing back on defense. It is mind-boggling how bad they've been, and it's kind of more the same from what we've seen the last 3 years. It's just, kind of flipped. It's been the offense the last few years while the defense has been carrying the load. Now the offense has to carry the load while the defense stinks it up. So we'll see, man. You got to do something to fix that, and we'll see what they decide to do. Clemson needs Venables back. Yeah, well, I think he's head coaching somewhere. Man, I think every Clemson fan would probably love to get Venables back, but I don't know that I'd be holding my breath waiting on that to happen. Punter. That's another one that's been kind of head scratching this year. Swanson was pretty solid in 2023. And this year he's been up and down, and probably more down than up. Man, he was bad Saturday. I don't know that he ever got a punt. I think he got one that went 41 yards, and his other 3 were under 40. That's not winning football. They got to get something figured out there too. We'll see. Maybe that's something they decide to address in the portal too. I've heard it been bantered about. You got Jack Smith there on scholarship. He's been there a couple years now, maybe 3. I can't remember for sure. 2 or either 3. He's like this big. He's 6'4", 245, 250 pounds, like this big old dude. He's got a cannon for a leg. But every time Dabo talks about him, the word inconsistent seems to be used. So that might be something they have to broach come the spring. I would, if I had to venture a guess, I'd say they'll go through the spring, see what Jack does, and if they're not happy with his progress, then address it then. But they've definitely got to be better there than they were this year, man. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but that's a critical piece. We're talking about flipping the field and field position and those kind of things, especially when your defense is prone to, just playing on roller skates. You kind of need to win the field position battle when you can. And Clemson didn't, the punting left a lot to be desired this year. That's for sure. The expectations next year are to compete for a championship. Do you take the risk of a wide receiver moving to running back or finding a quality running back in the portal? I'm not going to the portal for a running back, not the way. I'm telling you, they have very high expectations of Gideon coming in. They absolutely believe he can win the job. And you got to know how that recruitment played out to kind of understand why they're not going to take one over on top of him in the portal. And, you had Haynes back there. He should be good to go by the start of the season. That gives you a good 1-2 punch, especially if you get EZ kind of dialed in and going, man. Then you got 3 quality backs. And if you can get Randall kind of dialed in there, we're talking about a 4th or a 5th option. I mean, he's not going to be the starter. He's not going to be the backup. We're talking about for depth here. So that's kind of how I would view that. I thought Haynes at times did better than Maffa. Well, I mean, Maffa's been playing with a torn labrum the last month or so. He's been playing with a hurt shoulder since the Georgia game, to be quite honest. That's gotten worse and worse and worse as the season went on. I thought Haynes had the one good game against the Citadel, but outside of that, there was nothing I saw that made me think he was better than Maffa. Heck, not even a 70% Maffa. Just thought, I thought at the end of the season, he looked better than he did at the beginning of the season. I thought the first half of the season went way too easy on first contact and stuff. He got better as it went along. And again, people, we don't see what goes on in practice. And, he and EZ, I'm told, had some major fumbling issues in practice over the back half of the season. You got a guy that's got fumbling issues, you're not going to go out there and hand him the ball a bunch of times. But you talk about getting recruiting kicked into elite status again. They just brought in who the guy I think is the best running back in the class. Don't get more elite than that. So, I mean, kind of, I don't know what you want him to do. And again, if you knew how that recruitment played out, I don't know how much griping you'd be doing about the staff when it comes to running back recruiting, because they pulled off a major win just keeping that guy in the boat, in the fold. Okay, I'm not going to name any coaches that I think should be fired, or if I think somebody's getting fired, or any of that. Not my job, above my pay grade. I'll just say this. If there's any staff changes made, I wouldn't expect them before Christmas. I would even expect them, until after that, a little while after that. Just go back and watch how when Dabo went from Streeter to Riley, how that thing was handled. Nobody knew about it till it happened. He made sure he had the guy in place. Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces there. I know people want answers and they want them right now, but it's Christmas time, man. I don't think nobody's getting fired at Christmas. Why was Tyler Brown not on the field? Because they didn't need him, and he's not played since Florida State, really, and he's got a lot of rust he's got to knock off. And no need to put a rusty guy out there unless you have to. What about Drew Wood? I had people tell me that Drew was further along than Wade was, coming out of high school. So we'll see how that translates next year. Still, he's just a true freshman right now at this point. So we'll see what happens with him next year. See if he can kind of put himself in position to get on the field. What are the chances Darian Mayo is ready to give help a run in real competition? That's a good question, man. I thought he was a guy that would get some opportunities in fall camp. Obviously, he was not ready for him if he did. He's a guy that they need to kind of step up, though, and start contributing because you're thin on bodies there. I think you're probably going to lose a guy or two there that's kind of gotten buried on the depth chart. You need him to step up and start contributing. You need AJ Hoffler to take that big step that he didn't take this year. You got to have somebody opposite of TJ Parker. Otherwise, man, they're just going to keep attacking that side opposite of him over and over and over and over. And I think you need more than just help. They got to have somebody else step up because you got to be able to rotate guys. You can't have the same guys on the field every snap. And that's going to be what Help needs to work on when he gets to campus is, showing up his run support too. Because if there's one, that's kind of been the one thing I've seen about him or seen said about him from a couple of different people, that if there's an area that he needs to show up, is his run support. So that'll be something they need to work on. But yeah, Mayo's definitely a guy. Hoffler's a guy. Maybe Watford will be a guy that can come in and contribute as a freshman, although I wouldn't, bet on it. But that's definitely been a weak spot for sure. Do I think South Carolina wins the title next year? No, I don't. I think South Carolina's got a lot of money that they can throw around right now, and I think they're going to be good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're going to be national title good. Only question about the defensive staff is if Wes is cutthroat enough to grill his own position coaches and practices. Seems like attention to detail in all areas of defense. I think this is a fair assessment. I think attention to detail I think there wasn't very much attention to detail on that side of the ball this year, man. And it's very uncharacteristic of a Clemson defense. It's like I said, I just, I get it. Wes has earned a lot of criticism, man. The performances that defense have turned out the past month or so have earned him this criticism. It's fair. It's not unfair at all. But I also think it runs a little bit deeper than Wes. Again, he only, like we talked about earlier, he only coaches the linebackers and calls the plays. He's not out there teaching technique and fundamentals to defensive linemen or coverage skills to defensive backs. It's something that's got to be addressed, man, because you cannot go into next season. I don't know that there's anything that could happen. I think Wes lost the fan base after the South Carolina game, right or wrong, with Sammy kind of watching from the sideline in the fourth quarter. I think there's a large faction of the fan base that will never get over that. Let's say Wes is back next year and Clemson's back to being a lead on defense, top 10 rush defense, top 10 scoring defense, top 10 total defense, top 10 pass defense. There's still going to be a lot of people that still won't forgive him for that. So we'll see what happens. But I don't know how you go in the next season status quo. And that's not saying I think a change needs to be made here or there, anywhere else. But, there's something's got to be different. Because what you did this year just don't work. How do I feel about Jarvis Green? I think he's a dude that's worth keeping an eye on as far as potential portal departures. I said it on here last week or the week before last. I might have said it both times. Might have said it last 2 weeks. But, I never could figure out why Jarvis wasn't more of a commodity coming out of high school. And I asked several different people, and the best answer I could get was some schools thought he was a product of that Dutch fork offense that he run there. And, I watched Jarvis play a couple times in person when he was in high school, and he's a damn good back. I mean, he's really good. Great vision, great balance, man. He hits the hole. He's, all the stuff you like to see in a back. Not, I wouldn't say he had elite level speed or anything, but he's not slow by any stretch. But I was talking to somebody about Jarvis a few weeks ago up there in Clemson one weekend, and, the response to me was he doesn't have the speed to be an every down back at this level. That's what I was told. But, at the same time, I was also told he was a product of that Dutch fork offense, but I don't have much to go on to give you an opinion about what I think he can do at this level, because I've just not seen enough of him. He was great on the wheel route the other day. I was just happy to see Clemson run one. They never do it anymore. But we didn't get to see him really show off his wheels or anything. He just kind of snuck behind the defense there. It wasn't anything earth-shattering. Did his job. He caught the ball and scored. Right play caught at the right time. But I thought it was interesting earlier in the year that during some of those blowouts, when they got everybody on the field, that Easy got some touches before Green did. I thought that was kind of telling, even though I think Green's listed ahead of him on the depth chart. So we'll see if he's back next year. I could definitely see him being a guy that decides to look for playing time somewhere else. About Aaron Nolan, I just Nolan to South Carolina. They need an insurance policy. The way they run Sellers, and he got hurt already last year. He got hurt in that LSU game. If they win that game, they're probably in the playoff, man. And not having him the rest of that game killed them, along with some dumb penalties. But they were willing to spend on an insurance policy, and that's why they got him. Defenses usually take personality or defensive coordinator. See, now I think that's a little bit overplayed. There's plenty of fire on that defensive staff. Especially when Nick Eason's running the huddles and stuff. Yeah, I understand where the thinking comes from. I just don't think this is nearly as important as it made out to be sometimes. There's Wes is probably more fiery than he's given credit for, but he's definitely not the fieriest of dudes. But there's plenty of fire on that staff with some of those other guys. There is a coach who has the title defensive run game coordinator. Yeah, that's more of a name only type deal, man, just for getting somebody a raise. I wouldn't read a whole lot into that. Fans like Eason's recruiting and his attitude, and he's just a nice guy, but also supposedly loud with his guys, so to speak. Specs like, yeah, he's very demanding. He's very fiery. That's why I say there's plenty of juice on the defensive staff. He's one of them. Rump's very demanding too, man. He is a get in your face type of dude. I remember the first time watching him run a drill with those defensive ends after he took the job. Yeah, he's fun to watch. And Eason's very similar. All right, I can't run over tonight. So let's. Oh yeah, here's one. I couldn't remember the count, but here you go. Right here in the 14 playoff era, 12 of the 20 semifinal games were decided by 17 points or more. I remember at one point it was 11 of 16 or something like that. So I mean, we're getting some revisionist history here about the playoff, and now since they're blowouts, these teams don't belong. Oh, Indiana's the other one I was thinking of. We even got Herb Street going on the air saying wins should not matter as much as who you play. I used to respect Kurt Herbstreit probably more than any other college football analyst out there, but he has sold his soul to the devil, man. That was the biggest crock of BS I've ever heard. If wins and losses don't matter, why are we even playing the games, man? If who you play is all that's going to be, is the biggest metric used to determine who gets in the playoff, anybody outside of the SEC should stop playing football because the polls are rigged to where every week those guys are playing ranked teams because they come out, all of them are ranked in the top 25 from the jump. It doesn't matter that 3/4 of their rosters turned over or they lost half their team to eligibility. They're still in the top 25 because it just means more. But we've gotten to a point, and I'm telling you, when after next year and they redo the playoff, they renegotiate the playoff, the SEC is going to have 4 teams guaranteed in every year before the first snaps played. Nobody cares whether they're deserving of getting 4 teams in. They weren't deserving of getting 4 teams in this year. But they want to be guaranteed that 4 spot, man, because can't have Alabama be getting left out. When Alabama gets left out in favor of SMU, man, you got a big-time problem. And, I get it. All conferences aren't created equally. Well, guess what? All conferences aren't treated equally, haven't been. The SEC bias is as strong as it's ever been, probably stronger. It's they're starting to care more about who draws eyeballs than they do matchups. It's starting to slant to where they care more about the entertainment value than the integrity of the game. And it's like I said earlier, man, the conference commissioners and the ADs, they're all shills for the television networks now. ESPN runs the show. Fox runs the Big Ten. It's just a sad, sad thing. And it's the fan that suffers. I get it. If you're a South Carolina fan, you're proud of being in the SEC. I get it. Nobody's saying that the SEC sucks or they're not the best conference. They tend to be. I don't think they were head and shoulders that much better than everybody else this year, not the way it's being made out. If it was that damn good, Alabama don't go get beat by Vanderbilt. They don't get smoked by Oklahoma. And somehow it's only the SEC that can beat up on each other. Nobody else can do that. Not the Big Ten, not the ACC, not the Big 12. It's, we're playing with a stacked deck here. And, if you're just a casual fan, it's going to sap all the joy out of it for you. Yes, the 12 team is watered down like basketball. I knew it was going to expand because there's too much money not to, but I've been screaming it from the rooftops forever. 8. I didn't want to see it go past 4 because usually there aren't 4 teams that are good enough to win it all. But, with the portal now, there's a lot more parity. So 8 let's go to 8. That'd be great, man. 12's too many. We're gonna get plenty of blowouts, and I don't care who gets in and who doesn't. There's going to be plenty of blowouts. Even if you slide one of those SEC teams in there every year, there's still going to be plenty of blowouts. Again, we're getting some revisionist history there from some of the FCC propagandists. They're acting like we've never had blowouts in the playoff before, and there's been a ton of them in the quarterfinals. But no, we're not going to have a Boise State run it through the 12-team playoff and win it all, or that Indiana team of this year. I don't think anybody thought they were going to win it all. I did think they'd put up more of a fight than they did the other night, but I certainly didn't think they'd win it all. I didn't give SMU much of a chance up there at Penn State, considering the weather. You play that thing in a dome, it might be a better game, but no, you're not going to. This ain't basketball. You're right. And like this guy here, Ben says, man, their home field plays a big factor. There is a ton of motivation to get that first round bye. Here's the SEC propagandist for you. Pick the best team, not the best records. Who decides who the best teams are? How do you decide who the best teams are? I mean, usually, go back to last year. They didn't pick the best records. 12-0 Florida State got left out. All that's subjective. There's no surefire formula to do it. My point is, we can't get to a point where wins and losses don't matter. And that's basically what Kurt Herbstreit went on television and said the other day, that wins and losses don't matter. The only thing that matters is who you play. You want to get in the playoff, don't get beat by Vanderbilt. Don't get smoked by Oklahoma and then cry when you get left out for an 11-1 team. And if you're a South Carolina fan, you had a really good year. But guess what? Once you lost to Alabama and Ole Miss, you were never getting in. You were never going to jump those guys, no matter what happened. You say pick the best teams, not the best records. Guess what? You lost to those teams head-to-head. You did not deserve to get in over either one of those teams, and neither one of those teams deserve to get in. So if they're not in, you're not in. I get it. You want to bang the SEC flag and all that. Nobody's saying they're not the better conference. But we're to the point now, why don't you guys just go have your own playoff and let the SEC title game be your national championship? Because that's what you guys are pushing for. That's what you want. You want it all SEC all the time. You don't want anybody else to have hardly any access. Again, all that griping about Indiana and SMU not belonging. I ain't heard nobody say that about Tennessee, and they got their doors blown off probably worse than those other two did. I don't know. I think the whole thing's a farce. All right, I got to roll through the rest of this, see if I missed anything as I got to get out of here. Jay says MVP goes to Matt Luke. Yes, I'm coming. You're not even dressed. Okay, I'm coming. Here's a good one. How our teams, Clemson and others, got to go from 85 to 105 without using the portal? The SEC is going to stay at 85 for next year, so they don't have to do it. And you don't have to go up to 85. You just can't be over it. Clemson's roster this year had more than 140 players on it, if you count walk-ons. So you see, it won't be nearly as hard to get to 105. fact that Cade has been non-committal, even though Dabo says he's coming back, says something. I don't think it says anything other than the fact that it's contract season. All right. Y'all do not forget, if you are into PD, check out A-Glass for all your auto glass needs. For when you need a glass, A-Glass. 2 locations, Sumter, Florence. You can get yourself a free quote, myaglass.com. Always appreciate those guys being the sponsors of the show. Want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. Probably went off on a little tangent there that nobody asked about, and I'm probably in the minority on that, but I don't care. Not sure if we're going to do a show next week or not. Stay tuned for that, seeing as it's right in the middle of holiday. I try to do one when I can. I'm leaning towards thinking I can, but you know, if we're going to do one, you'll see it posted up and scheduled early Monday. If you don't see it by noon or so, that probably means we're not going to do it. And if we don't, we'll be right back here the following Monday. All my loyal watchers, listeners, viewers, whatever you want to call it, I appreciate all you guys tuning in. All you newcomers tonight, appreciate y'all tuning in too, man. I know everybody doesn't always agree with me, but that's what makes it fun, right? If everybody thought the same way, it'd be an awful, awful, boring world. Check us out. We got plenty of stuff coming on the site this week. ClemsonInsider.com. See y'all next time.